8 months into 2026, look at what has already happened in fashion. Zara signed John Galliano to a 2-year creative collaboration. Gap is building a more elevated creative layer around Gap Studio and Zac Posen. Jewellery has become one of the strongest parts of luxury. Artificial intelligence is starting to influence not only how fashion companies work, but potentially how consumers discover what to buy. Tariffs have shown up directly inside fashion company margins. Resale keeps growing. Companies are closing stores, simplifying operations, and talking much more seriously about productivity, inventory, and cash. And after years of aggressive price increases, luxury brands are suddenly being forced to prove something they could once almost take for granted. Why are we worth the premium? Now, here's the interesting part. Most of these pressures were predicted. The State of Fashion 2026, produced by the Business of Fashion and McKinsey, laid out 10 major forces it expected to reshape the industry. So 8 months later, I went back and audited every one of them. Not simply by looking at headlines, by looking at what companies are actually doing, sales, margins, sourcing, store networks, category performance, artificial intelligence adoption, and consumer behavior. For each prediction, I'm giving it one of 4 verdicts: materializing, partly right, too early, or not playing out as expected. But the score isn't actually the most interesting part, because when I connected all 10 predictions, they started pointing toward something much bigger. Something about what kind of fashion business is becoming stronger in 2026 and what kind of fashion business is becoming much more fragile. There is also an 11th risk sitting above all 10 predictions that I think deserves much more attention. We'll get there. This is Fashion Business Blueprint, where we look beyond the fashion and understand the business systems behind it. If you're building a fashion brand trying to scale one, or you're simply interested in understanding why some of the biggest businesses in this industry rise while others lose their advantage, subscribe. On this channel, we break down successful products, brands, and business models, and translate what they teach us into practical lessons for building a stronger fashion business. If you find this kind of analysis valuable, like the video as well. It helps me understand which research you want more of. Now let's start with what is happening underneath the industry. The report expected 2026 to remain difficult. Slow growth, cautious consumers, trade volatility, and a much wider gap between companies performing well and companies that weren't. For the full year macro prediction, my verdict is too early. 2026 isn't finished yet. But underneath the headline growth number, something important is already very clear. Dispersion. Inditex reported strong constant currency growth while also improving gross margin. H&M faced much softer sales, but still improved parts of its economics. Under Armour continued to struggle. Same broad consumer environment, very different outcomes. And that tells us something more useful than an industry-wide growth forecast. The consumer hasn't disappeared. The consumer has become more selective. And when the market isn't growing fast enough to carry everybody upward, companies have to create their own growth through product, relevance, value, execution, and better economics. I think that makes 2026 less of a simple contraction year and more of a redistribution year. When the market is expanding quickly, growth can hide weaknesses. A mediocre proposition can still find customers. Excess inventory can still move. Expensive customer acquisition can still look tolerable. price increases can temporarily hide weak volume. But when growth slows, those weaknesses become visible. So the first principle of this entire audit is simple. Slow markets don't eliminate growth. They expose who actually has a growth engine, and that takes us to the first prediction: tariff turbulence. The report predicted that tariffs would stop being a political headline and start appearing directly inside fashion economics. My verdict is materializing. Nike provides one of the clearest examples. Higher North American tariffs contributed directly to reported gross margin pressure during fiscal 2026. Then later, tariff-related changes produce significant effects in the opposite direction, meaning a company's margin can move even when nothing has changed about whether consumers actually want the product. Trade policy has become an operating variable. But the more interesting lesson comes from sourcing. Shein experimented with expanding production activity in Vietnam. The logic seems obvious. If China creates tariff or geopolitical exposure, diversify somewhere else. Except a fashion supply chain is not a country. And it isn't simply a factory. It is an ecosystem. Fabric, trims, technical development, labor, minimum orders, quality control, lead times, logistics, technology, and years of relationships connecting all of them. Moving the sewing operation does not mean you have recreated the ecosystem. So telling a fashion company to diversify sourcing is incomplete advice. Diversify what? Imagine your best-selling jacket depends on a specialized fabric, a particular construction technique, very low minimums, and rapid replenishment. Another factory only reduces risk if it can reproduce those capabilities. A cheaper sewing price becomes almost irrelevant if the alternative destroys quality or doubles your lead time. So founders need to measure supplier risk differently. What percentage of your gross profit depends on your top factory? Which materials have only one source? What happens to working capital if lead times double? What happens to your minimum orders, your quality, your switching cost? That is the real exposure. So yes, tariffs are materializing. But the deeper business lesson is this: supply chain resilience is not a country list, it is capability architecture. And that word architecture is going to keep appearing because the next prediction was supposedly about jobs. I think it's really about where human attention gets spent. The report predicted that artificial intelligence would begin changing fashion work itself. Processes, roles, skills, organizational structures. My verdict is partly right. Nike announced reductions in distribution center roles while accelerating automation. It later announced broader workforce reductions. But at around the same time, Nike was also recruiting for a role called Generative AI Lead Designer. And that contradiction is more informative than the headline that artificial intelligence is taking fashion jobs. Because two things can happen simultaneously. Routine and process-heavy work can become easier to automate. And companies can need more people capable of combining creative judgment with technology. Zalando gives us another useful example. The company says its AI content platform has dramatically reduced production time and costs in participating workflows. That's significant, but we shouldn't confuse faster digital content production with replacing fashion judgment. An AI system can help generate variations of an image. That doesn't mean it knows which silhouette deserves to exist next season, which material feels right, why one proportion suddenly feels culturally relevant, or why another already feels exhausted. And not every layoff is caused by artificial intelligence. Restructuring matters, sales pressure matters, overcapacity matters, organizational complexity matters, so the transformation is visible. The full industry-wide labor effect isn't yet clean enough to call fully materialized. The better business principle is this: automate what creates friction, protect what creates taste. For a founder, don't start with the question, which AI tool should we buy? Start with a different question. Where are we wasting human attention? Manual data entry, repeated handoffs, content bottlenecks, operational errors, repetitive administrative work. Automate those things, then protect what the customer actually pays you for. Product judgment, material choice, customer insight, negotiation, creative direction, brand voice, and simply taste. The objective isn't maximum automation, it is better allocation of human attention. And this connects directly to another prediction: efficiency unlocked. The report predicted that efficiency would become a strategic capability again. My verdict is materializing. Inditex has shown that growth and margin expansion can coexist. H&M has improved economics despite softer sales. Zalando is producing measurable productivity gains from technology. Kering has been reducing parts of its store network while trying to rebuild both profitability and demand. Different companies, same underlying shift. Fashion is rediscovering the difference between revenue and productive revenue. Imagine two companies both make $10 million in sales. The first needs constant discounting, excessive inventory, expensive customer acquisition, and too much store capacity. The second sells more at full price, turns inventory faster, and generates more repeat purchase. Same revenue, completely different business quality. And this is why revenue can be one of the most flattering numbers in fashion. It tells you how much money passed through the company. It doesn't tell you what the company had to sacrifice to produce it. If you want to go deeper into the production economics behind a commercially successful product, you may also want to watch my documentary on Dior's perfume business, tagged above. Now back to your business. Based on what we discussed so far about revenue and costs, a founder therefore needs to look beyond top-line sales. Gross margin, markdowns, inventory turns, returns, customer acquisition cost, repeat purchase, contribution margin, cash, supplier lead time. And then ask a harder question. Where is complexity not earning its keep? Too many products, too many low-volume colorways, too many weak channels, too much inventory, too many factories doing tiny amounts of business. Efficiency does not mean stripping the brand of everything customers value. It means removing what customers don't value so you can invest more heavily in what they do. Better products, better service, better creative work, better customer experience. So the new growth question is no longer simply, how do we sell more? It is, how do we create better economics from every dollar we sell? And notice what has happened already. Tariffs were supposed to be a sourcing story. AI workforce changes was supposed to be a technology story. Efficiency was supposed to be an operations story. But all three are exposing the same thing, the quality of the system underneath the brand. And we're only halfway through, because the next shift is happening between the brand and the customer. The report predicted that artificial intelligence would start becoming a new layer of fashion discovery, not just helping brands create marketing, helping consumers decide what to buy. My verdict is materializing. AI-referred retail traffic remains much smaller than traditional search and social, but it is growing quickly. Adobe data reported by Reuters showed AI-referred United States retail traffic rising sharply year over year, with those shoppers also showing strong engagement and conversion characteristics. Zalando says interactions with its own shopping assistant are increasing, and retailers are already restructuring product information so AI systems can better understand and recommend what they sell. But I think describing this as AI SEO understates what is happening. Imagine that instead of searching Google for the best black wool coat, you ask an AI assistant, find me a minimal black wool coat under $800, mostly natural materials, available in my size, with easy returns and delivery this week. You may never visit 20 websites. The AI can compare them first, which means another interface may decide which 5 brands deserve consideration before you ever visit a brand's website. That changes the power structure. Who controls discovery? Who controls comparison? Who owns checkout? Who owns the customer data? And who owns the repeat purchase? That's not merely SEO, that's channel power. Fashion has experienced versions of this before. Department stores, Google, Instagram, marketplaces. Every time another platform controls discovery, brands gain access to customers, but surrender part of the relationship. I could take that tension even further because it may compare alternatives before the consumer sees the brand itself. So fashion businesses now have 2 jobs. First, become easier for machines to understand. Precise materials, fit, measurements, care, availability, price, delivery, returns, use cases, structured product information. But second, don't let the brand become a spreadsheet. Because machines can compare attributes, the human still has to want you. So the competitive equation becomes this: machine readable product, human desirable brand. And that brings us to what I think may be the biggest consumer story inside the entire audit. The consumer hasn't simply stopped spending, they're reallocating it. They're asking much harder questions about what deserves the premium. And jewelry is one of the clearest places we can see that. The report predicted that jewelry would outperform much of clothing and soft luxury. My verdict is materializing, and this one has unusually strong cross-company evidence. Richemont's jewelry maisons reported very strong growth. LVMH's watches and jewelry business was one of the stronger parts of its portfolio. Kering Jewelry also reported strong comparable growth. 3 different groups, same broad signal. So why jewelry? One possible answer is what I would call value legibility. Jewelry contains forms of value customers can often articulate: precious material, craft, symbolism, permanence, gifting, self-purchase, and sometimes secondary market value. Now compare that with a handbag or piece of ready-to-wear whose price may have increased dramatically without an equally visible change in material, construction, or experience. That does not prove jewelry is growing because consumers see it as an investment. That would be too simplistic. Jewelry is emotional. It is identity. It is status. It is gifting. But the broader mechanism matters. When customers start questioning price, categories where value is easier to explain gain power. And that is a lesson far beyond jewelry. If you're charging a premium, can your customer explain what they're paying for? Material, craft, function, longevity, scarcity, meaning? If the answer is unclear, your problem may not be the number on the price tag. It may be that the value underneath the price has become difficult to see. And resale gives us another window into value. The report predicted that second-hand fashion would continue growing much faster than first-hand. My verdict is materializing. Vinted has reached enormous scale. Updated market estimates continue pointing toward substantial second-hand growth. But I think the more valuable business lesson isn't simply that resale is getting bigger. It's what resale tells you about the first sale. Which products appear on secondary platforms, which sell again quickly, which hold value, which collapse, which become collectible, which nobody seems to want twice. The first transaction tells you whether a customer wanted the product while the campaign, launch excitement, and store environment were helping sell it. The second transaction asks something much harsher. Does somebody still want this product once most of the original marketing is gone? That makes resale an external audit of durability, desirability, design longevity, and potentially brand equity. And that does not mean every small brand needs its own resale platform. A marketplace has enormous cross-brand liquidity. A small label may not have enough product or operational scale to make proprietary resale work. The strategic lesson is simpler. Study what happens to your products after you stop controlling them. Because resale can create a halo, but it can also expose a product nobody wants twice. Two more predictions are clearly moving in the predicted direction, but I think their business lessons are more useful than their trend headlines. First, smart glasses. My verdict is partly right. Ray-Ban Meta has pushed smart eyewear much further into mainstream fashion and optical distribution. The group behind Ray-Ban has identified AI glasses as an important contributor to growth. And the partnership model between technology companies and eyewear companies is spreading. But category growth alone does not tell us whether this becomes a great fashion business. Warranty, returns, hardware failure, upgrades, software dependence, obsolescence, margin. Those economics remain much less mature. So the lesson is simple. A high growth category is not automatically a high quality business. Then well-being. My verdict is partly right. Alo can move into wellness experiences because customers already give Alo permission to exist there. Lululemon can build community and well-being programs for the same reason. Beauty naturally overlaps with self-care. But the lesson isn't that every fashion brand should become a wellness brand. It is this: growth does not create brand permission. A new category should deepen what customers already believe about you. If it requires them to accept a completely new identity, you may not be building an ecosystem. You may simply be chasing a trend. And now we arrive at the two predictions I think should actually be read together, because one is happening from below and the other from above. The elevation game. The report predicted that affordable and mid-market brands would start moving upward. Better materials, better stores, stronger creative authority. Halo products, more sophisticated positioning. My verdict is materializing. Zara signed John Galliano to a 2-year creative collaboration. Gap has been using Gap Studio and Zac Posen to create a more elevated creative layer. COS increasingly speaks about craft, material intelligence, and everyday luxury. Aritzia has been generating strong growth from the premium middle, and none of them needs to become Hermes. That's not the point. They only need to change the customer's reference point, improve the material, improve the environment, create more authority, remove some of the cheap cues, Use a small number of halo products to make the entire proposition feel more valuable. And this becomes much more important because traditional luxury has simultaneously pushed prices dramatically higher. Imagine a customer comparing a $300 coat, an $800 premium coat, and a $4,000 luxury coat. They're no longer simply asking which logo they like. They're asking, what is the material difference, the design difference, construction, scarcity, service, status, meaning? And is that difference worth thousands of dollars? That creates what I think of as the contested middle. Zara does not need to become luxury to take purchase occasions away from luxury. It only needs to make the customer question whether luxury's premium is still justified. And this is why the sequence matters enormously for emerging brands. Premiumization is not raising the price, improving the photography, and calling yourself luxury. The sequence should be product authority, then perceived quality, then experience, then cultural credibility, and only then pricing power. Price can signal elevation. It cannot manufacture it, which brings us to luxury recalibrated. The report argued that luxury's reliance on price-led growth had reached its limit. Future growth would have to be earned through product, creativity, craftsmanship, service, experience, and renewed desirability. My verdict is materializing, but that does not mean luxury is back. The evidence is much more interesting than that. Chanel's first half comparable revenue growth has been reported as strongly positive, with Mathieu Blaisy's collections associated with the improvement. At LVMH, fashion and leather goods remained softer, while watches and jewellery performed better. Kering returned to slight group growth even while Gucci remained weaker, although the deterioration was slowing. Burberry has shown early signs of a more product-led recovery. So I don't think luxury is simply recovering. I think luxury is separating. Different houses, different categories, different customers, different speeds. And this gives us a better way to judge the extraordinary wave of new creative directors. A debut can create attention overnight. The press can declare a comeback after one collection. Social media can change sentiment within hours. But a business isn't repaired until that attention moves through an economic chain. Attention, consideration, full price purchase, repeat purchase, gross profit, cash. If it stops at attention, you have a successful creative moment. Not yet a business recovery. And that is why one of the most important principles in this entire audit is this. A new creative director is not a business model. Creativity can restart desire, and that matters enormously. But merchandising has to translate creativity into the right products. Stores need the right depth. Marketing has to sustain the meaning. Customers need to return after the launch excitement fades, and eventually margin has to improve. So when we judge a luxury turnaround, the question should not only be, did people like the collection? We should ask, did full price demand improve? Did demand broaden beyond one hero product? Did customers return? Did the house gain new customers? Did margin improve? And can the company reproduce that demand next season? Creative heat is not economic repair. And now look at what happens when we put elevation and luxury together. One side is trying to move perceived value upward. The other is trying to justify prices that have already moved upward. They're fighting over the same thing, the aspirational customer, and the right to charge a premium. That may be one of the biggest competitive battles in fashion right now. So after 8 months, where does the report stand? Of the 10 major themes, 7 are already materializing, 3 are partly right. And at this stage, None receives the strongest negative verdict, not playing out as expected. The broader, full-year macro forecast remains too early to judge completely, so directionally, the report has held up remarkably well. But that isn't actually the most valuable conclusion from this research, because the more useful insight appears when you stop looking at the trends separately. The elevation game and luxury recalibrated look like separate trends. I think they're one battle over value. The AI shopper isn't simply a technology trend, it is a battle over distribution and customer ownership. Tariffs and efficiency aren't really separate. They're exposing how resilient the operating system underneath the brand actually is. Jewellery and resale look different, but both reward products associated with durability, permanence, meaning, and retained value. And workforce rewired, AI shopping, and efficiency aren't three unrelated technology stories. They are one technology stack moving through the organization, the customer relationship, and the economics. So when I reconnect all 10 themes, I think the state of fashion got 4 things particularly right. First, artificial intelligence is moving from tool to infrastructure. Second, luxury's problem has become a value problem. Third, the middle of fashion matters again. And fourth, the operating architecture underneath the brand story is becoming visible again. When easy growth disappears, inventory becomes visible. Margin becomes visible, cash becomes visible, customer acquisition dependence becomes visible, supplier dependence becomes visible. And this leads to the 11th issue I mentioned at the beginning. I call it resilience architecture. Because a fashion company can correctly understand every trend in this video and still fail. If one product generates most of the profit, if one factory makes everything, if one platform brings nearly every customer, if one region drives demand, if one customer group supports the entire business, if one designer or one creative moment carries all the relevance, the thing that made the business successful can eventually become the thing the business cannot survive without. And there is an important distinction here. Concentration isn't always bad in the beginning. Focus is often exactly how brands become recognizable. One hero product, one customer, one proposition. The danger comes when focus quietly turns into dependency. So the question isn't simply how diversified are we? It's this: how many independent ways does this business have to keep creating gross profit when one engine weakens? That does not mean random diversification. Launching 10 categories doesn't make you resilient if none of them has a reason to exist. Resilience means reducing single points of failure without destroying coherence. Tariffs reveal supplier concentration. AI shopping reveals channel concentration. Jewelry can create another demand engine. Resale tests product longevity. Luxury exposes creative and customer concentration. Efficiency reveals how much fixed cost sits underneath every engine. Suddenly, the 10 predictions become something more useful than a trend report. They become a map of where fashion businesses can break. And the principle I would remember is this: focus creates recognition. Unmanaged concentration creates fragility. And after auditing all of this, if I had to reduce 2026 to one sentence, it would be: 2026 is not killing fashion. It is removing the shortcuts. Cheap sourcing isn't enough. Scale isn't enough. Raising prices isn't enough. A famous logo isn't enough. A viral campaign isn't enough. A new creative director isn't enough. Being visible on Google may soon not be enough, and one enormous bestseller is definitely not enough. The businesses gaining strength increasingly combine distinctive product, credible value, operational efficiency, customer ownership, multiple demand engines, and cultural relevance. And the important word is combine. Great product attached to bad economics can still fail. Efficient operations without desirability can fail. Brilliant marketing without product can fail. One bestseller without another demand engine can become dangerous. Technology without meaning can make the company faster without making the brand better. And price without visible value eventually consumes the very pricing power it depends on. So the lesson isn't to correctly predict every trend, it's to build a business capable of responding when the trend changes. A distinctive product, a value equation the customer understands, strong economics underneath the brand, ownership of the customer relationship, and enough resilience that one failure does not become an existential failure. And this was the overview. The first part of this research I want to investigate much more deeply is luxury. We've just gone through an extraordinary wave of new creative directors, but a successful debut collection and a successful business are two completely different things. So in the next fashion business blueprint, I'm asking, is creativity actually fixing luxury? We're going beyond the runway and looking at product demand, full price sales, customer response margins, and which creative resets may actually be turning into business recoveries. And if you're new here, this is Fashion Business Blueprint. We look beyond the runway to understand the business behind fashion, how brands create value, pricing power, and desirability, how creative decisions become commercial outcomes, why some fashion companies become resilient and others become dangerously dependent, and what founders can learn from the biggest businesses shaping this industry. Because fashion is creative, but fashion is also a business. And the most interesting part is understanding how those two sides work together. If that's the kind of fashion analysis you're looking for, subscribe and tell me in the comments, of these 10 predictions, which one surprised you the most? I'll see you in the next one.